All right, today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to tear a few pages out of those official history books, the ones, and look at the stuff they usually leave out. The weird parts, the brutal parts, and the parts that are frankly pretty disgusting.
So, when you think about history, what comes to mind? Is it all just, kings and queens, powdered wigs, and really polite high society parties?
Yeah, you might want to think again. The reality was, it was a whole lot messier. So let's just dive right in, shall we? Starting with how people used to settle their little disagreements.
Okay, Section 1. Brawls and bizarre tactics. Or, as I like to call it, when fights got weird and messy. We're talking about the raw, unfiltered violence of the past. So forget everything you've seen in the movies with those clean, choreographed sword fights. We're kicking this off with what was supposed to be a gentleman's duel that just went completely off the rails.
All right, check this out. This is the timeline of the Sandbar fight from 1827. Back on the American frontier, honor was, it was a deadly serious business. So you've got these two rivals, Samuel Wells and Thomas Maddox. They agreed to a formal pistol duel. So 0 seconds in, they fire their shots. Both miss. Whew! A minute later, they shake hands, honor is satisfied, everything's good, right? Nope, not even close. Just 15 seconds later, their supporters, who, by the way, hated each other even more than the duelists did, start a whole new fight, an all-out brawl. And right in the middle of this chaos, a guy named Jim Bowie gets shot in the hip and is about to become an absolute legend. And the result? 2 men dead, after a brawl that lasted just 90 seconds. And get this, Jim Bowie himself was shot twice and stabbed, but he still managed to kill his rival, Major Norris Wright, with this huge 9-inch hunting knife. And that knife, that's the one that would go down in history as the legendary Bowie knife.
Okay, so personal brawls are one thing. Frontier justice, right? But what happens when you scale that kind of chaos up to, actual warfare? Let me introduce you to the Turco-Mongol conqueror Timur. You might know him as Tamerlane. This guy faced a pretty intimidating problem and came up with a, let's just say, fiery solution.
So here's Tamerlane's little playbook for dealing with elephants. The scene is the Battle of Delhi in 1398. He's staring down 100 armored war elephants. His men are understandably terrified. So what's his brilliant idea? Step 1, load your camels with a bunch of wood and hay. Step 2, light said camels on fire. Step 3, prod the screaming, flaming camels directly towards the enemy lines. And the craziest part? It totally worked. The elephants freaked out, who wouldn't? They turned tail and trampled their own Indian forces into the ground. Absolutely brutal, but you got to admit, pretty effective.
All right, next up, disgusting, disturbing daily life. And the subtitle says it all, you'll be grateful for modern plumbing. We're moving from the battlefield to, the home. And believe me, things did not get any cleaner. In fact, they got a lot grosser. You might want to hold your breath for this next section.
So, let's talk about ancient Rome. One of their most valuable multi-purpose cleaning agents wasn't soap, it was urine. Seriously, they were big fans of its ammonia content. And the wealthy preferred the good stuff, urine collected from public urinals. They actually had people whose job it was to go around and collect it. I am not making this up.
So, what's on a Roman's to-do list? Oh, the usual. Wash your face with urine. Do a load of laundry with urine. Want pearly white teeth? You guessed it, gargle with urine. Oh, and for toothpaste? For that you'd make a paste of urine and crushed mouse brains. Yeah. Suddenly, Minty Fresh has a whole new meaning. And look, it wasn't just the common folk in ancient times. No. Even artistic geniuses had their own peculiar tastes. Let's jump forward a bit to one of the greatest composers who ever lived. You're looking at a quote from none other than Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. The line is, "Lick me in the ass, quickly, quickly." And it's from his 6-voice choral piece, Leck mich im Arsch. We think of Mozart as this refined genius, right? Well, it turns out he had let's call it a lifelong obsession with poop jokes and butt humor. And this wasn't just something he joked about in private letters. He composed a whole song about it for people to sing as a choir. Just let that sink in.
Okay, buckle up for our final section, history's most horrific endings. And just a heads up, the subtitle here is, a warning, this gets intense for a reason. We've done the weird and the gross. Now we're heading into the truly brutal.
But you know what? Not all endings were born of cruelty. Some actually came from incredible bravery. And before we dive into the really grim stuff, I want to tell you about one of them. Meet Sergeant Gander.
Gander was the mascot for the Royal Rifles of Canada, but during the Battle of Hong Kong, he was so much more. He was on the front lines. He actually attacked and chased away Japanese soldiers on multiple occasions. And then came his final heroic act. A live grenade landed right next to a group of wounded Canadian soldiers. Without a second of hesitation, Gander grabbed that grenade in his mouth, ran with it towards the enemy, and, well, he sacrificed himself in the explosion. He saved his men. An absolute hero.
Unfortunately for humans who challenged a king, the end was rarely so noble. In fact, it was the exact opposite. If you crossed a monarch, your death wasn't just a punishment, it was designed to be a terrifying public performance.
Take a look at the execution of Juan de Candamaris in 1492. His crime? He tried to assassinate King Ferdinand. And his punishment was this. First, they dragged him through town by a horse while he was alive. Then, they cut off his hand, still alive. Then, one of his breasts was torn out with hot tongs, still alive. Then they removed an eye, then the other hand, then the other eye, then his nose. And only after all of that, after they'd cut off his limbs and removed his heart, was he finally dead. This wasn't just an execution. It was a systematic, public mutilation meant to be a warning.
And yet, even facing that kind of unimaginable cruelty, the human spirit could be just unbelievably defiant. When Spanish conquistadors captured a Mapuche warrior named Goloverino, they cut off both of his hands to make an example of him. But he didn't beg, he didn't cry. He looked them in the eye and said, "I would rather die than live like you, and I'm only sorry that my death will keep me from tearing you to pieces with my teeth." Just wow.
So after all of this, flaming camels, urine for mouthwash, public torture spectacles, does that idea of a simpler time still sound quite so appealing? It really makes you think, doesn't it? Thanks for coming along for this little dive into history's unfiltered side.